Hello. It's
Hello.
all of everybody in the world that has internet right now. You get the sneak peek and a beginning.
Hello.
All of everybody in the world we have a bit of I'm hearing myself. Do we have another video?
I think you might have another window open.
Now we're good. Are we good? Always got to do the live. This is why we're excited to do our in-person event in Cambridge, October 1st, so that we just have more of technicalities when you're trying to do your slideshow, let's say, not so much of hearing yourself repeat. It really sucks, doesn't it?
That's pretty good. You're doing great.
Thank you. Well, I want to bring you. You are Alfonso Cuadra. You are the godfather of real estate. So the best one. Who else to talk to when we talk about the Landlord Tenant Board, the Residential Tenancy Act? Bringing your experience throughout the years, because everything has changed. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this Housing Today with Kayla.
Well, you know what? I'm excited to be here. I've admired your work from afar, and I'm so happy, that there's someone fighting for us landlords. That someone is there, that we have a voice. So it's incredible.
It's always about keep growing it. It's not going to be that one voice. I know we have so many different Facebook groups, so many different landlord associations that are in municipalities. It's definitely a team effort, and that's why we're doing the conference, to really invite our elected officials to our network and to say, these are the issues, these are the recommendations, and this is how we can come together as a community to really address the housing crisis. It's getting so bad. We have tent cities in Kitchener that are just growing, and they don't even know what to do and how to even dismantle it. What do you do? We have, there's an article that came out with $68 million is what we have to spend now in order to house refugees. So we have a huge problem that we're having. And but before we get into all my problems and getting your opinion on it, I want people to tell people about you, because I was fascinated. I put the bio in the chat here so that everyone can see who you are, but please give us a tell of who you are and what you got into, because I know you're fascinating.
Well, you just mentioned how many refugees are coming in?
Oh, there's quite a bit, but they have to spend 68 million. So we got to do
68 million. Okay, so
68 million is the cost value. So now we have to go in to see, well, how many and what that costs.
I think it's about 500,000 estimated coming this year to Canada. Or we're talking about refugees, right? So we're like, there's a lot of displaced people and families. I came here as a refugee. I came here in 1986. I was 9 years old. I was a refugee from El Salvador. Actually, I was in 2 wars by the age of 9. But at the age of 9, when I came here in 86, and because of we were living in a country of war, I missed a lot of educational opportunities. I had trouble in school. They never taught anything that I was interested in school. Ended up getting frustrated, dropping out, going with the wrong crowd, living on the streets. And I had a life-changing moment when I was 17, when I became a father. Okay, my little girl, her name is Celia. She was born. I was 17 years old, became a father, found purpose, started a business, went back to school. By the time I was 21, that business was across Canada. Now, I felt great and excited about my business, but the problem was I had no financial education. And as a 21-year-old, having all of this success and money, well, I spent all the money. I was very much a consumer. And so now I find myself 24 years old, almost about to lose everything. And then I started educating myself on business, finances, and I came to discovering the personal development field, specifically wealthy people, understanding how wealthy people operate. And what I quickly realized is that, number one, I was a consumer. So I needed to shift my mindset to becoming an investor. But most importantly, what I noticed, that all the wealthiest people in the world own real estate. And they don't just own duplexes and triplexes. The majority of the wealthiest families in the world own commercial real estate, doors. And when I was 24 years old, so now we're going back like almost 23 years ago, um, I decided to create a secondary stream of income that was indestructible. I was still running my businesses, but I was going to create a secondary stream of income, which was the real estate. I got into multifamily right away, primarily because I could see the power of numbers, the economy of scale, the idea that you can have multiple tenants, multiple people paying you rent. And that really excited me. And the idea that you can spread the risk amongst multiple doors, and this idea of people will always have to live somewhere. And so that's when I got into it, a long, long time ago. This is why they call me the Godfather. Because by the time I was 30, I was financially free. And I was so excited, finally, I sold my company. I didn't have to work another day in my life. And now I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do with my life? And that's when I decided that what I wanted to do is help people achieve financial freedom through real estate. And 15 years ago, I decided to get into the speaking and training and mentoring. And I've mentored thousands. I've been on stages with thousands and thousands of people training on real estate. A lot of those people have started their own programs, have done a really amazing things. I've created thousands of millionaires in the time that I've been in this industry. And so that's why someone said, oh, like, you're like the godfather of real estate. And it kind of took off. It was like, okay, and everybody started calling me the godfather. And then someone did a meme, and then that was it. When someone does a meme about you, it's solidified.
It's concrete. It's set in stone.
Yeah,
And
so I kind of ran with it. I'm like, you know what? It's cute,
you look at where you came from and how you were able to achieve that, and then we live in a society now where the jobs are out there, the drive is there. Like, how we just need to give that education now to most of our tenants, just to kind of help them achieve that
Yeah.
financial freedom as well, because a lot of people think that landlords are just rich and greedy, but they're still working that 9 to 5. They're still doing the work, the manual labor themselves. And this is why it's so inspiring to hear your story of where you came from, in order to give that hope to people who are still in that rut. Like, and where was your business? Where was your question? Like, what was your first business that you've created? Because
It
you
was a clothing
quite.
store. It was a clothing business when I was 17. Or back in the early 90s, 95, 96. And when my daughter was born, I went back to school, and I got a job, right? $5 an hour. That was the minimum wage back then.
Yeah, buddy.
And then I'm like, geez, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I took my first paycheck, and I was on Young Street, and there was these people selling uh, some T-shirts and jeans and mixtapes from like these booths on outside. They were like on some, probably the side of an alley somewhere, and I bought them. I took $250 and I bought jeans and T-shirts, and I brought them to Ottawa, where they hadn't even seen any of this stuff. And there was no internet. There was no ordering on Amazon or anything like that. Like, this was exclusive, and they were probably bootleg, to be honest with you. But this kid in high school, I said, hey, come to my locker. I got some gear, and I sold him. I bought the pair of jeans that I bought for 20. I was able to sell it to him for 60, making a $40 profit. And I'm like, this is a 10-minute transaction. I just made $40. I like this. I'm not gonna go back to my job and make $5 an hour. So what I decided to do was I was gonna pursue profits for the rest of my life. That was the decision that I made when I was 17 years old.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then what year did you get into real estate?
It must have been, so I did make a decision, and it might have been from a consumer perspective, but I did buy a house when I was 21, and that was a long time ago, because I'm 45 today. And so that house, when my business kind of had issues, I did I did sell that house, and it was the only thing that actually gained value. So it must have been like 2001, 2002 when I actually took it seriously. When it was like, okay, I'm gonna pursue investing, like buying real estate as an investment. That concept was very foreign to me before. I thought you just bought real estate and then the buildings,
Wait.
which is for the big guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I made that decision a long time ago, and it paid off.
And now how many units do you have now?
About 600.
600. So from the time you started from like t-shirts and clothing and selling it out of your luck, and that is awesome. Like my daughter, she was always like that. She had the rainbow loom bracelets. So at a very, very, I think she was like 8, she was selling them like lemonade, like a lemonade stand, right?
Yeah.
And we became investors at the age of
Whoa.
18. So we definitely have that in common, getting into it young, having children young as well.
How old are you?
I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was 18 when we.
It can motivate a person, right?
Oh yeah, you get the small kid. Like people are like, you're pregnant at that time and getting into real estate. I'm like, yeah, we were renting. We were renting for 6 months before we bought another property that we lived in, a semi attached. So that's where you kind of get that drive into knowing that we're real people. We've worked hard for our lives, to get these type of rental units and to get these type of properties. And sometimes you hold on to the single family so you can sell it, get something bigger. But sometimes we always have that problem, and we want to give our landlords hope. Right now the Landlord Tenant Board in Ontario, they just had their stakeholder meeting on the 6th, and it was not promising. They seem like they don't even know how to address the backlog. They're trying to address problems with the portal, and they're trying to problems with scheduling, and they still just talk about this huge backlog that they have at the Landlord Tenant Board, and they just think by hiring more adjudicators and still having to train adjudicators is that they're going to give access to justice. But some of these landlords, what would you say to them that are sitting there with a tenant that's been in their unit for now well over a year without even paying rent? Like, what kind of advice would you give them to hold on to that hope?
You're not gonna like my advice because sometimes you do have to cut your losses, right?
Yeah.
And you gotta, like, even with the person, and say, and you have to kind of say, listen, like, you win, okay? Give them that. You win, and what do we have to do for you to exit my life, right? And that's just kind of what you have to do, because if you wait for the government to help you, you can be waiting for a long time.
And that's where we always have, like, even when you have a tenant that's not paying rent right now for the Landlord Tenant Board, when you finally get to the Landlord Tenant Board, they're like, so what kind of payment arrangements have you guys worked out? Like, show us the documentation that you've tried to work out a payment arrangement trying to help out the tenant. And was like, we try to say, hey, where's your payments? Like, come on, like, they know rent is due. They should be making their payments. I'm always encouraging our landlords and all of the communities on Facebook that we need to be united by reporting rent payments to the landlord, to front lobby, so that it's shared with Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax on a monthly basis. This is a way for us to know.
Smaller towns it's easier because we have like a blacklist, and tenants are on that blacklist, and so
that's the problem, though. In Alberta, we have, like, even small Facebook groups. They have this hashtag landlord reference list. And now they made a big deal about it. It's like, yes, we only have a little bit of landlords in those groups, and these tenants, obviously, I'm not going to lie, they probably deserve to be in there based on their type of behavior. But what we don't understand,
it could have been someone, like, just upset. Someone just got upset someone because it's like, slept with my wife or something. They ended up on that list.
Well, and that's why reporting into a credible, like, legitly frontlobby.com and being able to get that to the credit bureaus, that's where you see the payment history, and then there is that open where they can dispute a payment that was there. So if they had a payment that they said this is not true, they can have that option to dispute it. The reason why the Landlord Credit Bureau or the Equifax or TransUnion haven't wanted to do this is because of the concept that they didn't have anyone to police it, right? Yeah. They didn't have anyone to make sure it's validated. You're checking them, you're approving these landlords, but we have to make sure that we're getting that type of payment history for the rent and utilities into a credit bureau, and so that when we're doing our credit checks, we get that information. And people may say like, oh, this is only good for other landlords. I'm like, but we're all going to be doing our credit checks. It's got to be routine. Don't accept a credit check from a tenant that's a photocopy. Like, don't do it. I have seen so many fraudulent ones. It's not even funny. So making sure that they're doing that. But with the landlord and tenant board being the way it is, and we're really trying to help and educate and work our experience with boots on the ground, what would you feel is the number one reason they're having such backlog at the landlord and tenant board?
Well, I mean, you can't expect to shut the world down for 2 years and not have consequences, right? At the end of the day, like they don't care. It's like the investors, they're losing money. Someone doesn't pay rent. They're not only are they not paying rent, but they're affecting the lives and enjoyment of other people in that building that are paying rent, right? And so sometimes your hands are tied, and so what I would say is, and I think we're talking about it before. If you're managing doors, if you're going to be a property manager, I think a good idea would be to get some psychology courses, conflict resolution, because by the time you go to the landlord tenant board, you're already going to lose, right? In my opinion. Okay, that's the last resort. Okay, so there is cases. I mean, we just went to a hearing. I think, and so my wife does, like, she does all the operations, but we just went to a hearing. I think it was about 2 months ago that we filed last year. Like, we're almost, by the time we get to the hearing, we almost forgot about what the hearing is about.
Yeah, we're like, how much do you owe? Like, what are we going on here for?
We were just like, you know what? It's a lot,
Yeah.
And some of the by the time it's like, okay, well, what about this? What about that? I had one particular tenant. We went all the way to the hearing. He said, oh, I can't read. We're like, okay, well, how did you get here? Like, how did you know about this hearing? And now we have to start the process again, and so the problem is that the laws are there to protect the tenants. They're actually, in those same laws, are actually doing the opposite than what their intention was, right? Because I guess they must have had good intentions of why they created all these rules and why they're so, there's not the backlog. The backlog is just negligence, but the rules and everything that, the reasoning doesn't make any sense at sometimes. Right. And so they're hurting tenants, because now as a property owner, you want to take a chance on someone, like Kayla, your credit is like, you went bankrupt 3 times. Like, you're trying to get your life together, but like, I feel you're a good person. I'll give you a chance this month, but if you don't follow through next month, you're gone. Like, I wish I could say that.
Yeah.
Like, but that the risk is too high.
Yeah.
The risk is too high. So you create a situation where you're pushing it on the landlords to help with the housing crisis, when we live in a country where it has the most empty land mass in the world. Like, we're the lowest density in terms of population in the world, with the lowest density in the world. And so we shouldn't have East Hastings. That East Hastings should not exist in Canada, right? Where I come from, okay, there's a lot of other social issues that we have going on. Okay, we understand by the time someone is living on the street, we understand all of that. But in Canada, the land of all this opportunity. And so, back to your question, what would I say to someone that is, or what the question was, why there's backlogs, or what do you think?
What would you say would be the biggest issue that the landlord and tenant board is facing? Like, the reason why it is the way it is. It's like,
I think it's just I just think is that they're not reasonable. It's unreasonable. It's not managed correctly. The a lot of the cases have to be reheard because they forgot a comma, or they forgot the guy's last name, or they didn't put the proper cent. Uh, there was something going around that they turned out um, they they threw out a case because they got the cents wrong. Okay,
Yep.
all that
5
stuff
cents,
is,
5 cents. I think it was 5 cents or 1 cent off. There was something like
I
that.
can't. It was ridiculous. It was like, and you know what? Like, if you show that to anybody else, like if you show that to someone, it's like, no, that can't be true. But you know, it was true from what I heard, what I saw in the picture.
Yeah.
So all that to say that a lot of things lead into it, but we can't, as landlords, we can't wait for them to fix the situation. It's not going to get any better. You know, of course, I know someone like you is fighting for it to be better, and you're going to continue. But I can't stop what I'm doing. I can't stop operating. I can't wait for the landlord tenant board. And so the strategy for me is simply negotiating with the tenants, and figuring out, like, okay, like, what is happening right now? Why is this person upset? How can we help them? I mean, we have real estate all across Canada, and when we were facing April 1st, 2020, that was like judgment day for a lot of investors. April 1st, 2020 came, and we were 98% collected. We have never been not collected ever in the history of our company. And the reason is because we communicated. We were there. We were like, we were, some of the tenants try to have meetings or whatever. No, 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 no. Like, let's let's just talk it out. Let's help you. Let's help each other. Let's, well, the premier says that we don't have, the landlords don't have to pay the mortgage. No, that's incorrect.
Oh, pay their rent. It's food or rent.
Yeah.
You got to pay for food, guys.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
No one's complaining about the food prices increasing, but you have a 2.5% increase next year, guys, and everyone's gone mad. They're like, "Oh my god, like what's
Well,
going
it's just
on here?"
misinformation, right? It's misinformation. People are confused, and ultimately, it's in our hands.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the position that I take. I say, listen, like all of these apartment buildings that we have, they're like mini communities.
Mm-hmm.
We're the mayors. Okay, we're the mayors of those many communities, and it's our job to work things out with our constituents, right?
Yeah.
And we figure things out. And if someone is not happy or whatever, okay, go. Like, you can go, and we can work it out. We can, and sometimes I will pay. I will sign the check to get to see someone leave.
See, that's the problem right there. When you have such a broken system, and we know it's broken, and the education to the landlords out there letting them know how long these backlogs are, and then they have the tenant communities, talking about how long the backlogs are, and they're now asking, how do I negotiate cash for keys? This used to be something very like underneath the radar. No one really talked about it. Now it's like becoming a normal process because the system is so broken. Now, because the system is so broken, what we are now seeing is that the private landlords who are knowing to be 60-70% of the housing stock is starting to tighten up their screening process. That screening process is now going to result into more and more people being denied rental applications. So they have to see what they're doing and how it's affecting. Now, with the Landlord Tenant Board,
you cannot take a chance.
That's where it is. And then when we told, like, I've talked to many social agencies, and I told them, I said, listen, I'm like, what's happening just based on the water billing, making landlords responsible for their tenants' delinquent utility bills. That's now resulted into landlords wanting not to select anyone who's on fixed income, on, social assistance, OWODSP. She's like, whoa, watch what you say there. I said, but I'm telling you, I'm not, I accept people on OW and ODSP. There's certain situations where, you want to give someone a chance because that's who you are. And they've been great so far because you're managing them. But now we see that we're tightening up the tenant screening. We have a broken landlord and tenant board. We have people temporarily in the associate chair portion of it to fix these issues. And you got to think, by the time you get yourself into a job and you say, you got to go fix this, first I got to see what the issue is, and then I got to try and fix it. And some of them are on like contracts, so by the time they understand it and they try to implement something to fix it, it's too late. So let's go on the Landlord and Tenant Board. Get your opinion on this little fussle in my head for the last 12 years. Understanding, here's a Landlord and Tenant Board, here's all the applications that you can file at the board, and knowing that a lot of them do not need to be heard by an adjudicator. I don't know why these cases are having to be submitted for a hearing, and you're sitting in this portal waiting there now for 2 weeks. Mediation has broken down. This is while we're at the Landlord and Tenant Board. We don't need to be stuck in a portal waiting for the landlord and the tenant to mediate their differences when we don't want that. We need to get ourselves into a hearing. Now that the hearing has taken place, and like you mentioned, there's little tiny hearing, like little errors that the landlords are doing, or even the tenants are doing, but it doesn't matter when the tenants do it. It's only when the landlords do it. So we have to start realizing that these little errors that they're trying to sweep underneath the rug just to get it off their docket, it's going back into that scheduling. It's going to take more time and more effort from the Landlord and Tenant Board. So let's work ourselves into removing the L1, so the non-payment of rent, from the Landlord and Tenant Board. It's their number one application at the Landlord and Tenant Board. So if we can have something black and white, here's the streamlined approach of, if you didn't pay rent, this is how long you have. These are the services that the government has offered people in desperate situations or hardship situations. This is where you can go and get the money in order to pay. And if you said that you've paid or you made payment arrangements and you want to dispute a longer eviction time, then you can apply a tenant to have a case heard to prolong that time frame of whatever the case may be. But they have to understand that we have an N12. You know real estate. How many times are the landlords selling properties that are tenanted where the owner is going to want to move into the place? So
yeah, so the thing with that is people always, that's their go-to, but there's the laws for that are forever changing, and like that N12, it's the tenant does not have to leave. Because I've seen some of that N12, I've seen those N12s get served, and it takes them a year and a half to get the person out.
And look at the paperwork. It tells them you do not have to leave after you get this notice. I'm like, so everyone is going to get a hearing, every dispute, everything that that the landlords are going to need it. It's very confusing. And you have to give them compensation. And if you don't give the compensation before the time frame on that document, that could void your eviction as well. So we have these like N12s and L1 applications that shouldn't even have to be brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board, should not have to be scheduled. It should be dealt with through a dispute resolution officer. The paperwork comes in, landlord shows all their evidence. If there's no evidence there, they can't issue it. And you can kind of streamline this entire process to alleviate the backlog and alleviate it for tenants who are struggling with landlords who don't want to do the maintenance, don't want to be following the rules or the laws. We're now opening up the Landlord and Tenant Board so they can have their chance to sit there and have their cases heard in dire situations. And that's how we're going to try to, bring this concept that it needs more small landlords on the voice. They need a board, they need a task force. But it seems like the Landlord and Tenant Board is able to just do whatever they want these days, and they know they're not providing access to justice. So I would all if you guys got a case at the Landlord and Tenant Board right now, ask for a refund.
Well, a good investment is always to have a good paralegal on the speed dial.
Yeah.
Someone that is really good with the ins and outs of the Landlord Tenant Board, and they're always in hearings, and people that know what they're doing. For us, you know what, we don't want to mess up on a comma, on a cent.
Yeah.
We actually have and we had to look for a few, right, in different markets to have a good paralegal. Every province has got their issues or whatnot. I mean, people people think about, provinces like Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're like, oh, they're so lucky. They still everyone's got their issues,
I know they're like, oh, 3 months, or we're waiting on 3 months. I'm like, I'll take 3 months.
Well, even if you go to the US, in Arkansas, if you don't pay your rent, you go to jail.
See, and this is where I'm starting to see, I'm following all groups, and like, are you seeing people leaving our Ontario and getting into other provinces and other states based on the concept that less risk. It's the less risk
Yeah.
that we're kind of going for.
Well, you know what? At the end of the day, we're still in Canada. We're still in North America. And when you see that some provinces are more lenient than others, it's not because they have a different philosophy. It's because they have a high vacancy. And
Mm,
so they know that if someone can't go, if it's for whatever reason someone has to go, they can go somewhere else. And when you start seeing the vacancy change and shift, this is when, the citizens, they're like, they push on the politicians, and the politicians now have to make decisions,
mhm,
right? And they don't know what they're doing. For example, New Brunswick used to be one of these provinces like Alberta that recently has just brought all the horses back into the barn. And so, the second you start to see that there's a vacancy issue, like we were seeing in Ontario, this is where, you get all these committees and people trying to solve these issues. But what they end up doing, because they don't bring people like us to the table to ask questions or get feedback from, all of a sudden they create these laws that hurt the tenants in the long run.
yeah.
And when you have a situation where you have um, it's a supply and demand issue, really, when it comes to it, because you don't have enough supply for the demand for housing, and that's what creates a crisis. But you can't put it on the landlords to solve the issue. It's the government has to solve that issue. Good case in point, Medicine Hat.
Mm,
Medicine Hat was the first city in the world. Okay, Medicine Hat, Alberta, was the first city in the world to solve the homelessness issue. They've
mhm.
completely abolished homelessness, and what they've done is they had all this land, like Canada has all of this land, and they created housing for people that need it. And they went to the individuals that were living on the street, and they say, you I'm going to bring you, this is your house, you can stay there, we understand you, there's other issues, we're not trying to solve those issues right now, but this is your house, here are the keys. If you want to get drunk, whatever you want to do, you can do it at your house. You want to do it at your house. Yeah. So when they see you on the streets, they pick you up and they bring you to your house.
Yeah. See,
Having an address is the first dignity, the first part of dignity.
yeah.
You can't solve anything until you have housing for people. And so the second someone has housing, then their life will change. And so Medicine Hat now, and this is now 5 years. They didn't just do this. This is like they've been doing this for 5 years. I don't know if you knew that or not,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's really interesting to research, because we can take a page from their book.
And that's why we're like trying to meet with different associations in different provinces, finding out what their rules and regulations, what their vacancy rate is, their demand. And you've seen recent articles with the 3.5 million homes that are needing to be built by 2030. But I also seen another article that said 5.8 million homes by 2030. So I don't know if exactly what the total is, but we do see that demand, and then we see the struggles that some of our developers are having just by even with their supply, and then you have the supply chain, and you have your permits, and you have municipalities, then we have NIMBYism. Not in my backyard. They think the small homes and these coach houses are going to be the solution to it all, and they would rather coach house in the backyard than a secondary suite in the basement. But you're not going to want the secondary suite in the basement because it doesn't come with parking, or the square footage is too small or too big. This is the concept that we're starting to see in many different patterns that's restricting people who are entrepreneurs who want to grow financial freedom, and you're giving that extra income to people who are, remember back in the day when you're up there in age and you want to downsize. That doesn't mean like that. We don't do that no more. No one's downsizing. The only thing we can do is try to convince them to want to get into secondary suites and get into investments. But when they look at what it's like to be an investor in Ontario, that's when they put the brakes on, right? That's where we want to change that philosophy, because we know what taxpayers are paying for emergency shelters, $3,000 a month to house one person in an emergency shelter, what we're costing for policing.
And people being subject to the elements, right? It's costing like hospital bills. I mean, like the to have someone on the street, it's cost the government more than to house them.
That's where it is, right? So we want to kind of they want to stop us from like getting the rent part of it, but it's the supply. We need some money. Keep putting taxes on us and the vacancy tax, and they're trying to do water billing and landlord licensing. I'm like, keep taking it away from me. That means I can't continue to keep building and keep building supply. So and the government can really, taxpayers afford to keep building, managing, maintaining, and subsidizing government housing when the way that they've managed it themselves. Now through all of these channels, and we have the federal government, the provincial government, municipal government, and even regional, we're all playing tug of war. They're all doing something, but they're all not together. So that's why I'm trying to, bring everybody together for the conference in October in Cambridge, bringing them together from all levels, give them that idea of like, here are top 5 issues for the LTB. Here's our top 5 solutions to the Landlord and Tenant Board. And same thing with the Residential Intensive Act and municipal policies and bylaws that are really restricting the development. And they got to stop with this, it's too big. It's like, we need it, or we need some more land. Like, where you want to go here? They prevented an individual from putting more stories on his property. So he went to the Ontario Land Tribunal and got it reversed. A lot of people don't know that, if city says no, you go and tell their mom and dad, right? And you complain there. Now,
so what is, from your opinion, what are the top 5 solutions to tribunal? Like, what would you what's your take on this?
We got 20 minutes left on here. I got to interview you.
Give me one.
I got to interview you. Well, for my number one is that we have to alleviate some of the cases that are being heard there. We have to know what gets heard by the Landlord and Tenant Board, how we streamline that process. Landlords are moving and selling their properties. They need to be having an out of that, and we shouldn't be having N12 applications have to be heard by an adjudicator, waiting 9 months to a year to have that heard. The landlord's now at fault for not closing on that deal, and now could be financially responsible because of that type of delay. Yes, we were able to advocate to expedite people's hearings based on an N12 where the new owner wants to move in, but there's so many nickel and diming that's happening there. And so many like, well, you didn't sign the affidavits, or the person who signed the affidavits, they're not here right now. And, you gave it to them on, it's supposed to be a 60-day notice, so similar to 60-day notice to the tenant stating that you need it. But because they gave an extra day on that form, that's now back into this of applications.
Quit the silliness. Like, quit the silliness and being unreasonable. I agree with you for sure. I mean, that's the commas and the like, quit the silliness, because that's what creates the backlog in the first place. I agree 100%.
We got to say this one to the viewers today. I've seen it. I've seen it over and over again. It was just popped into the feed today in the group. But we had someone that had a lease start on the 8th of the month, and he put the end of the lease to be on the 8th. So 8 to the 8th. And because it's not the 8th to the 8th, you actually have to do from the 8th to the 7th. Just like if your rent is due on the 1st, it's the end of the month, the 30th or the 31st. And because of that, the Landlord and Tenant Board had sent him an email informing him that this is going to be voided once you come to the hearing.
Wow.
Right? And I'm like, excuse me, does tenants really leave on the 30th or the 31st? My experience, they always leave on the 1st of the month, and then you're rushing in, you're cleaning, and you're giving the keys to the tenant in the evening hour, and then they're spending all their afternoon and evening into, being able to move into their new home, right? So this is the stuff that the common sense factor, and I like to go back on, trying to communicate with these elected officials and the staff at the Landlord and Tenant Board, and giving them with people with real boots on the ground and making these type of decisions, and not just paralegals. They have a lot of paralegals in the Landlord Tenant Board, and which is a good thing because they're going to know the rules and regulations. But at the same time, every issue is almost like more money to Canada Law Society. We shouldn't be so crazy and have to get a lawyer and give legal services to our tenants. We're giving out free legal services to tenants, but we got nothing for the landlords. And they always have that all landlords are rich and all tenants are poor, but there's so many tenants that are laughing right now. There's articles that says that it's better to be a renter right now than it is to be an owner. So we really want to kind of bring that into our voices into the board, and we need that with power. We need to keep showing them that, hey, we're connected. We're in all these groups on Facebook that they are able to let them know what's happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board, and then be able to say, hey, email your MPP. Hey, let's email the Landlord and Tenant Board. Protesting is great to bring awareness, but it's not going to be the one that's for our problem solving. We need to be communicating with each other. We need to be sharing different products and different tools. And that's why I'm such a passionate person to be telling people about rent reporting. It's a tax write-off, $199 for the year. Just get your rent reporting in. File the debt with the credit bureaus through Front Lobby in order for us to be connected and be unionized. Like, I want to be like that Better Business Bureau of landlords, or
I love it. I love it. I'm with you. Like, it's good to have you on our side.
Oh. I know, I get all into it, and then I'm
not all superheroes wear capes.
I know people are like, how you do it? You got 4 kids. I'm like, we have to. This is the sake of people. I'm like, I come from a family of tenants. My husband comes from the family of landlords, and I've been in the landlord business now for 20 years. I'm seeing such a very dangerous pattern that's happening here, and I want to provide more housing to people who need it. And we can't, as taxpayers, be on the hook to do it. We have to work a partnership, and the government knows that. They have different programs now with like, hey, we're going to give you $25,000 to create a secondary suite. Oh, the elected officials, that they say that the city is going to be as the head lease, but you look at the fine print, it doesn't really do well, because you still have to go through the Landlord and Tenant Board if the tenant says that whether their act applies, right? So we have to bring that together, and we have such a big issue. It's such an iceberg, and we're only looking at the issues on top. We have to look at the bottom, because they just need to partner with us and let us do what we do best, and that's about building, investing, and growing that housing stock. And look at you, from not having no units to already up to 600 units. And that's where every landlord's dream is like, how do we go from a duplex, or we want to have a 6-plex, now we want to have ourselves a 34 unit building? Like, how do we do that? And obviously you're the best person to tell us. How did you do it?
Well, I'll say this. The average Canadian will not, and this is like, I can say this with full confidence, will not have enough to retire.
Yeah.
They will not. And then that's going to be the government's issue. Unless you let entrepreneurs do their thing. People have their jobs, but they want to be landlords. They want to invest in property. That's going to offset the cost of what the government's going to have to pay for later on. And so there has to be incentives for us as investors, because if there is incentives, we will solve the housing issue. If you allow us to build more units, if you allow us to make decisions, if you allow us to make money. Now, having said that, I still would not be discouraged in getting into the game here in Ontario, right? Having said, it's true. There's backlogs. It's true. They're not reasonable. It's true. It leans more towards a tenant, but you still have it where this asset class is the best. What are you going to trust? The stock market, crypto? Where are you going to go? You know what I mean? And so I would not discourage people from investing in Ontario. We have our problems. People like you are working towards solutions. I have confidence either way, I'm still gonna buy real estate, you know, and
Oh
I-
yeah,
and I'm gonna play within whatever the rules are, you know. That's just what it is, because you know what? There's no other better asset class. There's no other better place.
and you know what? If for me, like I was like wondering if the phones were back up, but it's my daughter trying to FaceTime me. So if you hear that ringing in the background, that's she's. I don't know what she wants. She wants my van because she's scrap collecting. She's out getting the fridges, the stoves, everything. She's a hustler.
That's
That's
good. That's
that's
good.
where that's what,
Entrepreneurs solve problems.
and that's where we go into the concept of, trying to teach our tenants, if I was a tenant right now, what would I do? If I see the concept of rent, one, I would get myself, if I was by myself, I get a 2-bedroom. Why? Because now I'm going to have a roommate, get yourself, it sucks, but you know what? Not everyone's going to be able to have their own home or their own apartment right now. You literally need to start building that, to build yourself up financially. It's about getting that way of having a roommate, able to help with the cost and get those jobs, get whatever you need. But right now we have such a huge demand though for people waiting on the government housing waiting list. And that's growing. Like in Region Waterloo, it's 10 years.
Wow.
10 years, and it's 22 years from the last time I was checking with Mississauga. So you get to see how that's why I think they're trying to go on to the landlords back and the private investors, and wanting to make sure that, you're not just getting rich, that you're able to create these type of developments. And now they're trying to force you to create so many of them to be affordable. But then what happens is that cost to make it affordable is now incorporated it into the units that are going to be market rent. So now they become a little bit less unaffordable. So it's that chain reaction, right? So we really want to create that healthy atmosphere where I would love to see our municipalities create a map. Here's my city. This is where we want development. What can you build here? This is where we need housing, right? But a lot of, they're just going on the concept that it's you need to have an air transit, you need to have it near the grocery stores, and everyone wants to be in the downtown core. But I start to see that there's now development getting into the northern part of Ontario, and which is a good thing, because they definitely need some more housing up there too. But we have to do it together. I can't thank you enough, Alfonso, for being here. I know I want to pick your brain. Hopefully I can get you on the panel at the conference. That would be fantastic.
I'm ready.
We want to bring our elected officials, any elected officials watching here, is that it's going to be a fun atmosphere. We're not going to be jumping on top of you saying you all did this. This is just about, we understand that we have multiple different parties involved. It's multiple different staff changeover. It's really hard for you to understand the real housing issues. And we want to make it fun. Everyone's going to have dinner. Appetizers are being walked around as soon as you come into the place, with a dinner for everyone. Games. We're going to really have it as a party, an event for everyone to take part, and to meet other experts within the industry, to learn about different ways to manage your rental unit, so that you, like Alfonso said, or the GodFather said, that you got to get that concept of communicating with your tenants. There's a lot of problems that we can solve without having to go to the Landlord Tenant Board. So meeting with people in our community that are able to get that information to you, it's going to be fantastic. And I think that we're going to be able to really do something, as long as we continue to talk about it, and bring awareness to what these issues are, and give these solutions. We're done talking about our problems. They know of our problems. It's going to be about the solutions to address the housing crisis, so that we can open up the door to people who are really in desperate need of housing, so that we don't see more tent cities and more homelessness in our city, because this is Canada, and we really shouldn't be having this type of way of life.
You know what? It's all about the solutions.
Yeah.
If we can focus on that, I think we could solve a lot of things.
I think so too, and I can't wait to have you on. I really, you better not be in Italy. I tell you, I heard that there was backlogs at the airport. I don't think you really want to be traveling at that time. So if
I'll see what I can do.
And I'll put the link for the details of the conference, guys, that you can get in there, so you can join us and have it as a wedding. I always say, like, if landlords and real estate got married, this is what it's going to be. We're going to have a lot of fun communicating, bringing our brainstorms together, because I got a lot of my issues or solutions. So we want to bring that to our themed conference so everyone can enjoy themselves, and making sure that you're signing up with frontlobby.com. Our membership for, we have a discount code for Front Lobby, that's OLW15, and that gets you a $15 credit when you sign up for a premium membership. And that way you can get your first credit check and a half, because the credit checks are only $9.99 when you are a premium member. And you, make sure you do your credit checks. Guys, I talk to a lot of landlords all day long. Number one problem, they ain't doing their credit checks. I know it sucks, but this is why it also helps our landlords, our tenants who may have, pay their rent on time, just have bad credit. Yeah. Now getting their landlords do reporting, that's going to help them build and improve the credit. So we start to help out our tenants who've had, a downhill spiral that just they couldn't get out of. It's a win-win. So put everything there in the comments. I'm going to have Alfonso back on, because I swear, like, we want to do it in person next time though.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
I even put a dress on because I had the Godfather on here today. I usually got my t-shirt. I'm like, makeup on. I'm like, we got the Godfather. So I want to thank everyone for subscribing to the YouTube channel, being a part of our Ontario Landlords Watch Facebook group. I watch everyone's comments and the posts that you're sharing, and keep helping each other and be very kind to one another. We have very inexperienced investors out there, and we have very, very experienced investors that are here to help. So make sure that you guys are always nice, and I look forward to seeing everybody in person again. It's going to be amazing. Last time I did it, I was 9 months pregnant. So I am not pregnant, and I am ready to host the best conference that anyone has ever been a part of, because it's not the traditional one. This is going to be about really making our industry better and bringing the real estate experts together with our elected officials. So invite your elected officials to this conference. Let them know to contact me, whatever we got to do to get them there. They need to listen and learn and be able to come together as a proper team so that we can fix the housing crisis. Now, Alfonso, where can people find you? Where can they find you? I know
the best thing to do, I would say, go over to my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search Alfonso Cuadra, and subscribe.
Perfect. And then I'll start sending out some invites to like WealthGenius, because I tell you, everyone's taking pictures of the family that you've created there. Like that's where it's like the family and the Godfather are like, oh man, I'm like, it's working really well. And they're so appreciative. And you can tell you're bringing so much value to them. So I want to make sure that our members get to see that in our channel. So make sure that we have you on again. And hopefully you're at the panel, because I know we have more people that I can't wait to announce who are going to be attending the conference and that are going to be speaking. And we're really just time to get our boots on the ground, get our hands dirty. We got to start solving this problem, because winter's just around the corner, and it breaks my heart to see what's happening here in Canada. Thank you everyone for watching. Subscribe, and until our next Facebook Live next week, and we have a property manager coming on. So stay tuned, and we'll give you all the details.